The wilderness movement in America began with environmental idealism focused on conservation of large areas of open space. Many people agreed it was a noble cause. The wilderness movement, however, has evolved into a full-fledged political assault on the lands and resources of the United States. A look at the conditions on the Arizona-Mexican border reveals a war zone in the battle between environmentalism and American security. Havens of illegal activity are now deeply established in these wilderness areas. This trend may be impossible to counter, and we are at risk that the activity will spread. Prior to 1990, the most access routes into the United States for the flow of illegals was through major metropolitan areas. In the urban border centers in California and El Paso, the flow of undocumented aliens became such an uncontrolled tide of humanity that American citizens finally demanded something be done. The Border Patrol instituted major operations in urban centers to stem the flows. The idea was simple: pinch off the flows in the urban areas where illegals quickly disappeared into concentrated populations north of the border, and force them into rural areas where interdiction and apprehension would be easier to accomplish. The Border Patrol operations accomplished the intended objective and succeeded in rerouting the tide of illegal traffic away from the urban areas and into rural areas, but their ability to stem the tide of illegal entry failed in Arizona. They encountered an unexpected countervailing force. They faced interference by Department of Interior land management agencies, particularly within the more than 1 million acres of designated wilderness adjacent to and extending north from the border. The Border Patrol was prepared to deal with the vast areas along the border, but when they encountered the legislated restrictions imposed on federally designated wilderness, a whole new set of circumstances was introduced that impacted their ability to operate. The Border Patrol and the American public were required to adhere to the numerous restrictions placed on all activities in federal wilderness areas and enforced by the managing land agencies. In the original Wilderness Act of 1964, there was no allowance for temporary or permanent roads, and vehicular access was prohibited. Use of mechanized equipment was prohibited, along with a long list of other restrictions. Not surprising, the drug and human smugglers have no regard for the legislated restrictions, and they quickly found the open desert expanses ideal for their business. Blacked-out Cherokees and Ford Explorers filled with drugs raced across the desert at night, while caravans of humans illegally entering our country trudged north day and night, knowing their chances of being stopped were minimal. The various federal agencies were attempting to operate with conflicting objectives, and could be expected. Agency battles ensued. Meanwhile, the number of illegals parading across the soft underbelly of wilderness in the national wildlife refuges and monuments along the border skyrocketed. The welcome mat was laid out, and the news spread quickly. Where there were no roads, they made roads. Where there were no trails, they made trails. Look closely at this slide. Satellite imagery shows an intensive network of trails created by the flow of illegal traffic out in the wilderness on the western side of Oregon Pipe. Substantial damage to the landscape escalated and was apparent everywhere. A DOI threat assessment states thousands of trails and hundreds of roads have been illegally created by smugglers across our public lands. This proliferation of trails and roads damages and destroys vegetation, wildlife, and causes soil compaction and erosion. Tons of trash and high concentrations of human waste are left behind, impacting wildlife, vegetation, and water quality. This prompted Park Service officials at Oregon Pipe National Monument to institute a study to attempt to measure the damage. What they documented through this effort would have given pause to every American. The Oregon Pipe National Monument was designated federal wilderness in 1978 and has more than 300,000 acres managed by the National Park Service. It borders the Cabeza Prieta Wilderness, comprised of more than 800,000 acres of federal wilderness designated in 1990 and managed by Fish and Wildlife Service. The following slides are from a National Park Service presentation on border-related impacts to Sonoran Desert Wilderness in southwest Arizona, prepared by the resource management staff of the Oregon Pipe Cactus National Monument. The initial slide shows the Oregon Pipe National Monument wilderness is displayed in blue and non-wilderness areas are displayed in yellow. In the first overlay, fire scars are shown as small yellow dots scattered throughout the monument. These are remnants of fires started for warmth and cooking by illegals making their way across the monument. In the second overlay, horse tracks are added. In most Park Service managed lands, horses are not allowed. These are tracks of horses used illegally by drug cartels in transporting drugs. Next, illegal bicycle tracks are added. Bicycles, considered mechanized equipment, are not allowed in wilderness. Rest sites created by illegals are overlaid next. These are not improved rest sites. National Park Service rest sites are only allowed in the yellow, non-wilderness areas. When vehicle tracks are added, the extent of damage to the natural environment at Oregon Pipe becomes shocking. It is important to recognize that motorized vehicular traffic is expressly prohibited by law in any federal designated wilderness area. Now, the areas of trash, excluding water bottles, are added to the overlays. Recall that the DOI report indicated tons of trash and high concentrations of human waste. Discarded water bottles are now added to the overlays. Finally, if all demarcation of wilderness eliminated and illegal foot trails are added, the full scope of the damage to designated, fully managed and monitored Oregon Pipe National Monument wilderness is readily apparent. If you look closely, it appears that the non-wilderness areas are actually impacted less than the designated wilderness. It is only in the non-wilderness areas that the Border Patrol is allowed full, unconditional, and unrestricted access. The Park Service study at Oregon Pipe also did a refined study to elaborate on the damage in a representative 1 square kilometer area, about a 160-acre parcel, out in the middle of the Valley of the Ahos. Remember, this is an area where an unsuspecting family visiting the monument from anywhere in the United States might visit to enjoy an afternoon hike. This graphic represents their findings of what a typical square kilometer would contain. It would contain 7 illegal rest sites, 15 sets of illegal vehicle tracks, 40 sites of illegal trash disposal, 48 discarded water bottles, 1 set of illegal bicycle tracks, 1 set of illegal horse tracks, 3 illegal abandoned campfires, and 254 illegal foot trails. Given these conditions, it shouldn't be surprising that paid park visitation suffered dramatically. The staff indicated that in a 1-year period, backcountry overnight visitation at the monument decreased from about 4,000 down to less than 2,000, while estimated illegals in the monument at any given time increased from some 7,500 per night to over 20,000. The study suggests that subsequent year illegal numbers were even higher. Illegals outnumbered paid visitation at least 10 to 1. Conversations with individuals from the Border Patrol reveal that many officers believe the actual number of illegals is easily twice that reported amount.